Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and have a lot more fun. I'm your host, Paul Sanneman from Contractors Staffing Source, where we help contractors build great teams. I have Jeni Jonte from Eliminate Impossible with me this morning. So, Jeni, tell me a little about your background and how you got into coaching.
Absolutely. So my background is actually in physical therapy, and I did that for about 16 years, but I recognized the limitations of the profession. And through my own work and personal growth and development, I came to understand what it was that I was supposed to do. So I made a career flip and just kind of jumped in feet first into coaching, and I have never looked back.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, having a coach for 50 years, I'm an old guy with like thousands of clients. One of the biggest issues I always had was how do you take somebody, all my clients are construction. So they start out as usually a carpenter or some kind of tradesperson. And then they get mad at their boss for some reason and they decide to start their own company. All right. So they have to make this transition from, I'm going to call it a craftsman, employee mentality to an owner mentality. What do you see as the difference in those two value systems, and how do you make that shift?
Yeah, I think it all comes from within and how you see yourself. So your self-concept or your self-image, whatever you want to call it, that has to shift in order for you to fully take form of this new identity, this person that's already inside of you, but you just haven't expressed that part of you before. So that was actually probably the hardest part for me in making that change in profession because I didn't realize how much of my self-concept or my identity or how I saw myself was wrapped around being a physical therapist. So then jumping into not only a new role, but starting my own business and working on trying to grow that, I had to change things from the inside. And once I changed that mindset and understood that these parts were already there within me. There's some reason that they're wanting to jump into their own profession, right? Their own business to become an entrepreneur and do things for themselves. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to do that, but there's something that pushed them to do that. So really tapping into that why, understanding where they're going, what the purpose is, and then finding those parts of themselves that are already there and bringing them to the surface so that they can become the best entrepreneur and the most successful as possible.
So, what do you think are the parts of yourself, as you mentioned, that are different between an employee versus a business owner or entrepreneur?
So there's so many differences. So first of all, I mean, just the basics of when you're an employee, you are just following orders more or less, right? You don't have as much control over your schedule, over what job you're going to be doing, over where you're going. Like you are just kind of following along what you're told to do, right? So now you're switching yourself into this new role where you are the person in charge. You get to decide what jobs are we going to take? Who's going to do these jobs? Who do I have that I can employ now to go out and do these different things? So the complete mindset and way that you're going to approach things are so different. And when you're almost boxed in, I hate to say, as an employee, you don't even get a chance to express possibly what it is that you desire or where you'd like to go with things or how you would like to see whatever the project is or the what you're working on, how you would like to accomplish that. You are kind of confined to what your employee is telling you to do. So now that you're in the new role, you get to be the one who makes these decisions and you get to decide how big of a company do you want? How many people do you want to employ? How many different projects do you want to do in a year? Like all of these things that you now get to make the decisions on. So I feel like it's so different. It's just night and day, in my opinion.
Well, one of the things that I think is a really different transition to make is that um, when you're an employer, your mission is to build a team, right?
Yes.
And when you're a employee, your mission is to be a good team player, which is
Hmm.
a different
Hmm.
job, right? So how would you go from the mindset, I'm a team player, I support my other team members, I'm here to win, whatever that is, like, but to where your mission is to build the team that can
Hmm.
get done what you want to get done. I know one of the issues with a lot of contractors is, well, it's easier to do it myself than teach somebody how to do it. So
Oh.
they end up going, well, I can, I'll go on the job. And what happens is they end up owning a job, not owning a business, because
Hmm.
they just do all the work that nobody else wants to do because they're the owner and they can't find anybody to do it. So again, is there any exercises or meditations or something you can do to change that mindset from my job is to be a good team player to my job is building the team?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key things there. And one is to get a very clear vision of where it is that you want to go with your company. Like, what do you see this being in the next 6 months, year, or 5 years? What do you want it to be? How big do you want it to be? How many team members do you want it to have? And, like I said, how many different jobs do you want to have in a year? Like all of these things, you have to have a very clear vision so that you know exactly where you're heading and how many people it is that you actually want to employ. You want to make sure that you train them the way that you want them to be trained so that you know that they're going to do a good job. But then another piece to that, and this is something I struggle with as well, is relinquishing control over some parts, right? I think I actually was having this conversation with myself about this morning because there's still areas where I want to hold tight to control, and you have to be able to let some things go and allow other people to show you what they're capable of so that they can, step up to the plate and they can be the new good team player and they can do a good job at these different things. So there's so many different areas of that. And yes, if you want to sit down and have sessions where you're visualizing. I mean, this is something I do several times a day just to make sure that I'm staying clearly focused on where it is that I'm going and where I want my company to grow to, and spend a few quiet moments, even if it's only like 3 to 5 minutes, just getting that clear picture. I think that's the number one thing that you really need to have. And then making sure that you see, I have this many team members and they are performing this way. And so you have this all in your mind before it's even, put into reality, right? You know exactly who you want to have, how you want to have them trained, what you want them to be able to do and how you want the jobs to be able to go. So all of this is clear, and then you just take steps to make it happen.
Right. I have a consulting joke about the letting go because letting go is really hard to do. I mean, that's tough. I
It
remember
is.
there's a I have a joke that's a coaching joke where some guy's walking along, it's dark, he doesn't know how to, it's really dark, dark. He falls off a cliff and he's like grabs onto this branch, he knows he's gonna die. He's convinced of it because he can't see the bottom. So he prays, he goes, God, get me out of here. I'll do anything, just get me out of here. Nothing happens. Finally gets very serious. It's his whole life's at stake. So he goes, I'll do anything, anything at all to get out of here. So finally, this big booming voice comes out of the sky and says, this is the Lord, Lenny. Do me anything. It's anything, absolutely anything. He says, okay, Lenny, let go. And
Oh.
he comes back and says, is there anybody else up there I can talk to? And then then the sun comes up and he's like, 10 foot off the ground. But the thing is,
Oh my
it's, it's really hard because,
God. It
we've
is.
all let go and gotten in trouble, right? Before. And so it's
Hmm.
easier to like keep control. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with people making that transition is they've all got these, well, I gave this to some guy, he messed it up. I gave this guy, he messed it up. So I'm not going to
Mm,
trust anybody. So I'm never going to let go again. And then they're stuck. So
hmm.
another, I think, important part of business is following your intuition. I think that's,
Yes.
access to intelligence. So how would you suggest in your coaching practice, how do you get people to follow their intuition versus their logic or their friends or their spouse or whoever else is telling them what to do?
Yes. Well, you do want to be careful of who you talk to. Like you get this big vision, right? And you don't necessarily want to go out and share that with every single person because people are going to have their opinion on your vision and where you're trying to go. So be careful, who you want to share that with and how much you want to share that. But one of the things that we do actually is to develop our 6 intellectual faculties, one of those being your intuition, because it is really, really important. And it kind of goes along with your joke, but I've heard somebody say, and I can't remember who now, but when we pray, we're talking to God. And when we use our intuition, God is talking to us. But we have to listen, right? So it's there all around you. But again, you need to be open enough to actually even listen and receive the things that are coming to you and acknowledge that and then take action on that, which is another thing that you have to train yourself to do, right? It doesn't come that naturally or easily for everybody, but if you start to, sit back and start to pay more attention and really listen to the things that are going on around you, what people are saying, you're going to start to pick up on things that maybe you didn't even notice before. And then this will help cue you in so that when you are interviewing new team members to be part of your growing company, it'll help you realize, using your intuition to know, is this person going to be a good team member? Is he going to do a good job? And, is this going to be what is the word that I'm looking for? A good investment, I guess,
Right.
in hiring this
Right.
individual, which I know is easier said than done. But I think that if
Right.
you act from a place of knowing, right? So we have our levels of belief, and you want to get from a need up to a knowing, just knowing that you're going to find the right person and not, struggling and striving and pushing and pressing to make sure that you're finding all of this, but knowing that it's going to happen and being able to sit back and allow it to happen.
I know one of the things, I heard a book called, this, I think it's, I wrote a book, and in the book it says, it's called Business Success Tips. The guy's called Contractor Success Tips. And one is that you can look at the brain as a complex computer or a radio receiver, right? There's like, and education is based on it's a computer, garbage in, garbage out. You just train this computer. And
Mm-hmm.
or intuitive is based on it's a radio receiver. You just listen to God or whatever consciousness, and it shows up in your brain. But one of the things I've noticed, and maybe you tell me how to do this with some people, is you have this aha moment, right? We've all usually it's at 3 a.m. Well, like, oh my God, right? Or in the shower or
Yes.
someplace. And I find if I write it down, as opposed
Mm.
to, but I like a yellow pad, anything, doesn't matter. Just write
Mm-hmm.
your aha down so you don't forget it. And
Mm-hmm.
then inevitably, when you read it, you go, I'm not sure that was a good idea because your logic will attack, right? Your
Yes.
intuitive hit, right? And so you
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, I should fire so and so, or I should hire so and so, or I should whatever, right? Because the universe is talking to you, and you get
Mm-hmm.
it, and then your mind or your rational self tries to analyze it, and usually doesn't make any sense. And
Yes.
so when you have the conflict between, oh, I should fire, whatever, John, and you wake up in the morning, and go, I can't fire John. He's been with her 4 years. His wife would get mad, and
Mm.
have all this other stuff about why you shouldn't fire John. How do you resolve the intuitive versus the mind, monkey mind, saying it's you're just done, like logic versus intuitive? How do you deal with that?
Yes. And that is definitely a skill that you need to develop because our logical mind is going to only look at our current circumstances and our current reality and make decisions based on that. Whereas our intuition, we can look into the future, we can look into that vision, and we can understand that like these things are going to help that come to fruition into our new reality. That is what we're creating. But our logical mind, we're going to reach the terror barrier in one way or another, right? So if you're working to grow your business and you're understanding, oh, this employee, you get this intuitive hit, this employee is not really serving the business anymore. And I think we need to go a different direction. And then you're going to hit that terror barrier. Something is going to come up because you are trying to entertain this bigger idea of where you want the company to grow and where you're trying to go. And this is going to stop you. And the easiest thing is just bounce off of that and go right back into
Right.
we call it bondage, but it's just like where this, your current programming or how you see things are, because this is safe. We're gonna be fine. Oh, we'll just keep him and we'll make it work. Versus like just pushing through and understanding that that intuition is coming from where you want to go, right? And it's so hard sometimes to allow yourself to push through that terror barrier, but the more that you understand what is happening, why your logical mind is trying to sabotage this intuitive hit that you got, and then you can better understand it and you can know what you need to do, which is to push through and go ahead and act on that intuition and faith that it is going to, cause whatever is next in the next step of unfolding of your vision.
I
I hope
think
that made
faith is,
sense.
yeah, I think faith, because,
Yes.
faith is based on, faith. It was like, you just believe it because you believe it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a couple of things happen when you're following intuition. One is that asking other people sometimes isn't the best idea because they're gonna they're gonna say,
Hmm.
"Oh, that's a dumb," they're gonna trash it. And I
Hmm.
think when you're going with your intuition, part of it is you have to believe in yourself and where you're going. And I
Yes.
know that happens in a lot of companies when people have these aha experiences, and yet when they, ask their, other people, which tend to support the logic, it's really difficult to get through. But I have had the
Hmm.
experience after being coaching forever is that when people either have the wrong person, they take the wrong job, in construction, and lots of times you take on clients you shouldn't, you hire people you shouldn't, and
Hmm.
but every time I ask somebody, did you have like this gut feeling it was a bad idea? And they'll go, yeah, every time. Like,
Yep.
you know, I knew when I signed that contract, it was not a good idea, but I did it
Hmm.
anyway because I needed the money or whatever's going on with him, right? Or when, I knew I should have let John go, but I didn't because, my wife said it was a bad idea, whatever. And then I regret it because he did awful things with the company. So,
Mm.
having done this in retrospect, I think people listening to this, when you have made a bad decision and you look back upon it, 99 times out of 100, you had like this intuitive hit. This is a bad
Yes.
decision, but you didn't listen.
Yes. Hmm. Yep. I'm laughing because it's happened to me so many times as well. And sometimes we need to learn the hard way. But it's best if you have those experiences and you start to look back and you recognize, yes, I had that feeling, then hopefully the next time you have that feeling, you would know to act on it instead. Like if you're signing something and you're like, yeah, you have that intuition telling you this, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Or like the person you mentioned, like they signed something and you're like, oh, but we needed the money. See, they're coming from that place of need. That's where we want to get
Right.
away from. So you do something you know that you don't really want to do, or you know is not the best choice, but you're coming from that need. Like, oh, I'm going to keep this person because we just need to have them. Like you've got to get past that. So the levels are like need, want, belief, and then knowing. So you've got to get past that feeling of acting out of need, because I think that's where a lot of these things come up, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I actually just did that recently. I thought I was helping the person. I don't, it's a story about a dog. It has nothing to do with this business, but um, but I just knew there was something about, someone asked me to board their dogs, and I just look at them. I'm like, something is telling me not to do it. But I did it anyway because I thought I was helping
Right.
them. I thought they needed
Well,
it, and it turned
I
into a
think,
bad situation. But
there's a lot of philosophy says there's two basic motivators, fear and love, right? That's what drives everything.
yes.
And when you're
Hmm.
coming out of fear, when you look at that usually intuition isn't out of fear in general,
No.
because and
Yeah.
so when you have this intuitive, like, I'm doing this because I'm afraid, sometimes that's a
Yes.
good way to identify this is not, fear is not a good motivator. I shouldn't go with the fear because fear is going to be, create more fear and it's a bad idea. And there's
Hmm.
also there's a fine line between compassion and what's the other word when you're codependent, right? And I can't tell you
Yes.
how many people disguise codependence with compassion. And well, I can't for this guy because he needs a job, or I can't. And they're basically
Hmm.
being codependent, but it looks like they're being a nice person. But the truth
Yes.
is, they're just supporting the person's negative behavior, right? I mean, sure,
Hmm.
if anybody's been to AA, that's one of the themes. Like, you can't like support somebody's bad habit by being codependent and enabling that person to continue doing stuff that doesn't work. So I think it's the same kind of thing. If you get that kind of intuitive feeling like, is this codependence like I'm doing because I'm afraid he won't like me, or I'm doing it
Mm,
because I feel from my higher self that it's a good idea. And I
that's
can't say
right.
how many times that a lot of people keep employees that they shouldn't and
Yeah.
do these kind of things because they're being codependent. And they say, well, he needs a job or whatever. But the truth is, in the bigger picture in his life, maybe he needs to be fired or she needs to be fired. Maybe they need to move on, right? They're in a blocked
Yeah.
relationship that sucks. So that idea of listening to intuition and trying to find the difference between codependence versus compassion, I think it's a good thing to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of thoughts I have on that. I love that. So one thing is, when I look back at my life and some of the times that I was at my lowest, but it needed to happen, right? So like you were saying, like maybe that person needs to get fired because something else, they're meant for something else and they're just holding on to this, right? So
Mhm.
that might just be part of their path. And, to look at that and not see just the negative, but like what could come from this? What could they learn from that? What might it do for their life if they're not just stuck here? Holding on to this. But then also this idea that I can't remember who I heard this from, but it takes immense courage to be able to let go of things that are not serving you. So that might
Right.
be in your personal life or in your business, right? So this is, I think, one of the hardest things that a lot of us have to do because we want to hold on. For what reason? One reason or another, we're holding on to
Well, usually it's
something.
some form of addiction, but we don't want to admit it, right? Uh,
Yes.
we're addicted to being right. We're addicted, pick an addiction, right? But
Hmm. Hmm.
some kind of addiction that looks like compassion because you just don't want to get in trouble. So
Yes.
Jenny, if people want to get in touch with you and are interested in coaching with you, how do they do that?
So the best place would actually go to bringonpossible.com. And then that's where, whatever my next event is going to be. And then my other links are there as well.
Okay, cool. And again, what is it? Tell me one more time.
Bring on possible.
Bringonpossible.com. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, thank you, Jenny. This has been helpful. And if you want some good coaching, I think Jenny's a good person to call. Thank you.
Thank you.